right, so I want to help explain standards reference grading, as it's sometimes called, or mastery-based grading, because it's very different from what many of us of a certain generation grew up in, which is we'll call it the traditional grading system of A, B, C, D, and F, and percentages, and grading on averages, and the bell curve, and those sorts of things. So this is very different, so it can feel not great for some people because it's unknown. But when you start to really understand, it makes a lot of sense. So the key to understanding standards reference grading or mastery-based grading is understanding what the target is so that you can actually hit it, right? Any athlete knows that they are trying to create either a personal record or a school record or a state championship record. They know the target. And so they work and they train and they get feedback from coaches to achieve that target. This is the same idea in other areas of learning. So really what we're looking at is how are skills being built and how the student is doing in relation to those standards or those skills. So really what I struggled with was, what does an A mean? What does a B mean? What does a C mean? What does a D mean? What does an F mean? And this kind of takes that all away, and it really clarifies for the student, the teacher, and the parent what those things mean. So really when kids ask, how do I get an A? Well, you need to look at some feedback and revise and redo until you've mastered it at that standard. So an A doesn't necessarily mean you've mastered something, because it is kind of been an arbitrary line. So really the most important thing in standards referenced grading or mastery-based grading is this learning cycle, and that learning is constantly on a cycle. So really what happens is the teacher says, I need to teach this particular skill. Let's say in this instance, it's how to write a thesis statement. So the teacher says, what does the student need to do? And they communicate that to the student. They say, you need to know how to write a thesis statement, and here's how you do it. And so now that's the teacher teaching the student and the student learning the skill. Then the student practices that skill. And again, in the sports analogy, they go to practice and they keep practicing, say, shooting drills for creating soccer goals, and the coach is like, you're twisting your foot a little bit too much to the left, maybe try rotating it to the right, and you make those minor adjustments and you start to see improvement. Same idea here in learning in an academic setting. Formative assessments allow us to have students practice those skills over and over and over again until they master it. And each time a student practices it, they get feedback. They get information back from the teacher that tells them what little tweaks they need to do to improve and try and relearn it. Finally, the students get that feedback, and they also should do some personal reflections. Did I learn it or not? And what do I need to improve on as a student to continue? And then the cycle just continues. So it's a constant feedback loop. So what this is important to know the difference between formative versus summative assessments. Formative equals practice. Practice makes perfect. We tell musicians this. We tell athletes this. This is the same for learning any subject, any content area, any skill. So when we think of formative assessments, we want to think of them as assessment as learning and for learning. You're trying to learn from your mistakes and your missteps. Mistakes are okay in a standards reference system. It's proof that you're trying, and both the teacher is open to giving you feedback and helping you improve and letting you redo work so that you can show and demonstrate that improvement. And students are willing to make those mistakes, take that risk, because they know it's safe. They're going to get feedback. They're going to get another opportunity to do it over or to do the skill again to show that improvement. Summative assessments are a little bit different. These are final. This is to show what you know at the end and whether or not you've mastered the standards of a course or a lesson. This is assessment of learning. What did you learn? What can you do? And at what level are you performing in relation to those standards? These are more kind of carved in stone sometimes. These are end of unit assessments. These are end of course exams. These are including everything from AP exams to SATs. So you have to have some idea of what proficiency looks like. In a lot of classes, it can look something like this in a standards reference system. Advanced meets or being proficient, you're approaching, or you're insufficient, or you're incomplete, you're not quite hitting the target. So the target is proficient. The target is that light green zone. If you hit that, great, you've met the standard. Advanced means you're going above and beyond. Approaching means you're close, you're almost there, but you've got some more practice to do. Insufficient or incomplete means you really haven't mastered the standard or enough of the standards if we're talking about a whole class to really earn that credit. Another way to look at this is insufficient or incomplete. Students have difficulty demonstrating that knowledge, or they simply have not completed enough work to demonstrate understanding and knowledge. Approaching means that the student is able to demonstrate some of those, but they really are lacking key areas, key knowledge, key vocabulary, and key skills. Maybe they still have the training wheels on. Student has mastered a standard. They're riding off on that bike all on their own. They don't need any help. Look, mom, look at me. That's what you're going to hear students say. Advanced, that student has taken that skill and they can apply it, but they apply it in a very sophisticated manner. And they go above and beyond the expectation of the standard. So for example, again, if a student is asked to write a thesis statement, I can have a student who has mastered the standard because they can write a thesis statement, but then can have a student who has mastered it at an advanced level because they use higher levels of vocabulary and more complex sentence structures. So then we know that that student is above and beyond and at the advanced stage. Approaching might mean a student needs something like a sentence starter to actually compose that sentence. So you can see this is how it is different than a traditional grading system. Knowing that a student earned a C in a class tells me nothing about what skills they have actually mastered. Often, we are looking for a growth mindset in this, and the learning curve, often what we think it looks like is this straight line on the left, but honestly, having done this, it really looks more like the right. It is a very messy process because learning anything is a messy process and there's not a constant linear trajectory. We will have setbacks. Life happens. Often students will start low in a subject area, and then through that feedback loop, they will improve so that by the end of a grading term, they are mastering the standards. And that's an important shift. They're not just getting credit and A's because they did it. They are getting information about how they did it in regards to the standards and the skill that they were being asked to master. And if they don't master it, they're going to have to do it over and over again until they get it. And that's that feedback loop to get towards that mastery standard. What this takes out of the mix is behaviors. Often adults desire, and I've heard many teachers and parents say this, to hold kids accountable. But that's not actually an assessed standard in most curriculums. Now, is it something of value into itself? Absolutely. Do we all need to show up on time to work? Do we all need to do things on time? Yes, but it would be its own standard. It would not be part of any other assignment. What this attitude has led to is harmful grading practices in traditional grading systems, which are starting to shift. Rather than giving students zeros on assignment, we're giving them incompletes so that they have the opportunity to make up and redo those assignments and get those into standard. I need you as a student to show me what you know and can do. This requires teachers to allow late work. By not allowing late work, we as teachers are saying, yeah, whatever is going on at home may not matter. What really matters is me being able to grade this in a timely manner. That has nothing to do with whether or not you can write a complex sentence or a thesis statement or do a science lab. It just tells me that you're tardy or you have something going on. This also means that teachers should be allowing more retakes and revisions of work so that students can internalize that feedback and show their instructors through the assessment and learning cycle that they can improve. So some things that are a little bit different than traditional grading systems. All right, I hope this helps. And this is how grading for learning can work.